Welcome to Book Crew. We are on KCCC, 9:30 a.m. in Carlsbad, New Mexico, on Mondays at noon. We're available on YouTube and Rumble under the Task Force Geek banner. And by the time that you hear this, we'll be on every major podcast aggregator out there. I am writer and marketing Jedi Dirk Hooper, and I'm joined as always by author and editor Beth A. Freely. How are you doing, Beth?
I'm doing good, Dirk. You know, you were asking me earlier about the Book Fest.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about it a few times, but I figure some of our listeners might want to learn about it, considering that a couple of our guests, including today's guest, have come to us from the Book Fest.
Yeah, more than a couple. I would say that about half of them have come through Book
so far. But for those of you who aren't aware of, Book Fest is probably one of the best book contests and festivals currently out there. They run in the spring and in the fall, and I highly recommend authors of all ages, of all genres, cover artists, and audio to enter your work into the Book Fest. It's they do a lot of really great work. I am actually a Book Fest winner. I am now also a Book Fest bellwether, as well as a corporate bellwether. So, you know, if you see posts of mine on Facebook where I'm talking about, hey, I got a panel here on the Book Fest, you know, I am involved in interviewing authors on the Book Fest for panels for readers to enjoy. I've put together small presentations. I recently did one on developmental editing that was aired on this recent Book Fest last weekend. It is a great festival. If you don't enter a book, it always runs 2 days. The first day is for readers, and you can learn about all new authors on that first day and listen to some really fun panels. And the second day is all for writers, where, you know, our writers can learn more about different things like developmental editing. And then, of course, you know, smattered all through it is, you know, the winners, you know, who won what with what book and the awards and the whole 9 yards. And they are doing some really, really good marketing work and really good promotion for indie authors and helping us get the word out about, you know, your books, about what you're doing. And, you know, they're legit. If anybody asks, you know, what do you know about the Book Fest? Tell them to come talk to me. I'll be more than happy to give them the rundown about what Desiree Duffy is doing with the Book Fest. And man, it's if you've got a book, enter it. You might win. You won't know until you try.
What kind of, do they have all kinds of categories?
All kinds of categories. Everything from children's books to nonfiction, romance, with every single romance genre you could possibly think of.
Wow.
When I entered Beyond the Steps of Stone, I won first place for romance science fiction, and then first place for sci-fi, alien, and alien invasion.
Okay.
So, you know, you can enter multiple genres for your book. You can enter multiple books, you know.
You said that it happens twice a year?
Twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. So the spring one just happened this past weekend, the 4th and the 5th of April. So the fall one will probably happen, I would say, probably September, October is about when the fall one should happen.
The person that you just mentioned who runs it?
Desiree Duffy with Black Chateau Productions.
We should have her on here.
Yes, I need to reach out to her and get her on here because she's had me on a couple of podcasts, and I really want to return the favor and help her get the word out about the Book Fest.
Yeah, for sure. I think that would, I mean, obviously it's a great resource. If so many people on this show have participated in that, I think that it's just a natural thing. We should get her on here. And
I'll reach out to her. She definitely needs to come on and talk about it and talk about, you know, what they do and everything. thanks to the book fest, I've had two articles published in the indie author magazine. So
That's awesome.
that gave me two bylines, to add to my resume, which has been great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, let's get to our guest today.
Let's get Peter in here. He's going to be he's a fun guy to talk to.
He has been. So
Yeah.
we talked to him quite a bit before we started this thing, so we know him quite well. Peter Gribble is a writer and lifelong student of history whose work explores the intersections of knowledge, power, and the human condition. His fantasy series, The City of Magicians, is set in a civilization that rejects traditional warfare. Influenced by his childhood in post-war France, where silence about the war was as pervasive as its lingering shadows, Gribble crafts stories that explore the dangers of complacency and the consequences of pacifism and brutality colliding. Gribble studied art at Sheridan College School of Design, experimental psychology at the University of Toronto, and education at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. He has written for Nouveau and various British Columbia publications, including gardening columns for two journals over a decade. His time working in bookstores reinforced his belief in the power of books to inspire, challenge, and transform. Peter Gribble, welcome to Book Crew.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is awesome to get you on here. Yeah, for sure.
And by the way, I would recommend, get Desiree on the show, because I've come through you via Black Chateau and the Book Fest.
There you go.
I've read your
we
book.
have so many people that are involved in it.
Oh, you have? Oh, thank you. My goodness. What did you think?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. I read it through the Book Fest as one of the bellwethers and everything, and it was a great read. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Wait till you see book 2.
I know. I'm waiting for it. I'm excited.
Well, book 2 actually won the gold medal for best literary sci-fi this year.
Nice.
Very cool.
Good.
Just 2 weeks ago.
I'm glad for that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, tell us about writing Threat, the first book in the City of Magician series.
Well, it starts off with the premise of what does a pacifist, nonviolent city-state do to prepare for a barbarian invasion coming in 6 months. They've got a plan. It should work, except they've discovered there's an underground movement plotting to collaborate with the same barbarian. And what do? Are they compromised already? And the young man who has been chosen to educate the barbarian adds to the problem by saying, "What? Me? Are you kidding? You made a mistake." So that's chapter 1.
So when did you write this, and what inspired you to get started on this?
Well, the germ of it started when I was 9 years old. I would never, ever thought to have ever written about it or was motivated by it. I was 9 years old. I was standing in the Normandy War Memorial Site, which is massive, surrounded by thousands of little white crosses going right to the horizon. And the funny thing is about living in France, we lived in France for 3 years, and I went to an international French school. And my mom said on the first day of school, there was a war, Germany lost, you don't talk about it. That's it. So, all right, fine. Because it was an international school, so you had German kids, French kids, Belgian, Dutch, and whatever. And so the war was never discussed. So by contrast, when I was in this field, I was stunned. And my mom was trying to exercise my math abilities and say, "Oh, and how old was this one when he died?" They were all in their 20s. But all the numbers ended with 1940, 1941, 42, 43. And then she said, "And how old was this one?" Well, the death date was 1917, and his birth year was 1890 something. "Mummy, the numbers are wrong." And that's because he died in the First World War. The First World War, I was stunned. I was flabbergasted into silence. And something in me woke that day to, this is wrong, inherently wrong. And I felt this inarticulate vindication that I knew I was right. the first time that a child knows that they are right, irrevocably, it's a very interesting thing. So this sat there for decades. When we came back to Europe, I read up about Martin Luther King's, his speeches, his sermons, his essays, and also read about Mahatma Gandhi and his what is called satyagraha, or nonviolent, non-cooperative resistance. So I have a provisional sympathy for pacifism, but it is insufficient against things like Hitler's Germany, Stalin's Gulag, Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution. So when it does work, the people are usually fairly united. But even in India, there was division between the Hindus and the Muslims, which was one of Mahatma Gandhi's great crises, that he could not keep the people together in this kick the British out. So I thought that needed exploration. How do you contend with a potential invasion when your culture is none of the above?
Yeah, very interesting. So you've written 3 books in the series so far. What can
Yes.
readers expect? What is the style, and give us a little bit of the flavor of those first three books.
Okay, they're fairly feet on the ground. You get immersed immediately into the culture. They write differently, they think differently, and yet you can find a sympathy to their perspective. The first, I would say 80 pages, it's fairly immersive. And then it becomes a page turner as you realize the crises are deepening. The mistakes are, some of the mistakes are being caught, and then some of them are just, oh my goodness, this is out of our hands now. So it does become definitely a page turner. But the writing is fairly clear, fairly spare. There's not that much description, but a lot is inferred by the language.
There's a lot of world building too. From
Yes.
what I read, the world building that you did is phenomenal.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, I had to draw a map to make sure I didn't get lost.
That was
So,
one of my
there you go.
questions. Since you're
Nice.
showing it, I might as well ask it now.
okay, yeah.
Tell us how you created the map, and what was the thought process that went into that, because I'm sure that a lot of other authors have considered creating a map of a city or a world.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a fascinating story about Ursula Le Guin, who, when she was, before she was even writing the story, the map came first, apparently. And as she was drawing each island spoke to her and said, "Oh, this is where something such and such happens. Oh, another island, this is where this happens." And apparently, this is where Earthsea came from. The map came first. And the stories came with every drawing. So, but I also had to make sure that there's a cute little story, and unfortunately, I can't remember the author's name, Canadian author, and he writes about a detective inspector in Vancouver. And his books were fairly popular about 10 and 20 years ago. They sold very well in Eastern Europe. And at one point, he's driving down a street in the West End part of Vancouver, and he turns left and finds whatever he needs to find. And the letter came from him. This was in the days when letters were written. And it was a reader in the Outer Hebridean Islands said, "Oh, you can't turn left down this Comox Street. You've made a mistake." And he was right. So I thought I'd better draw a map to make sure that...
And make sure you're not turning left down a street you're not supposed to.
Exactly, yes. Yeah.
What other I mean, you kind of had the germ of the idea for this series long ago, and then you built that world. What are the type of things that you like? How did you do your world building over time, and how did you collect that information, and what type of things did you create?
Well, one of the things I love languages. I have a smattering in about 16 languages, which is saying, hi, how
Wow.
are you? Yeah, hi, how are
Wow.
you? I don't speak your language very well. And one of the languages I was very interested in at a very, very young age, roughly the same time, was Chinese. I just love the fact that you can write this seemingly
Mm-hmm.
pictorial way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took courses in both Mandarin and Cantonese. I'm currently working on Farsi and Punjabi
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
because there are lots of people in the Vancouver area that speak it. So I would just say,
Sure.
oh, in Farsi chimishiri tarjamash, how would you say this in Farsi? Type of thing. So I can't. I'm learning how to text in Farsi. It's painful because it goes from right to left, and so I'm not sure I'm going to be very successful in that. It's sort of, but the notion of writing in a different form, in a different script, I decided that the language and the written language in the City of Magicians would be in glyphic form. So studying Mayan, ancient Egyptian, Chinese, and also, interestingly enough, sign language, because sign
Mm.
language is
Mm-hmm.
also pictorial. So you can say, I know a little ASL. Um, and so, and the interesting thing about all four, they start using shortcuts to say, oh, this is the word that means this. And it's very interesting to find commonality, even though these are very dispersed. They had no contact with each other. Um, so I started inventing this glyphic form of writing. So that was the language part. The other thing I wanted to make sure was it's in a late medieval, early Renaissance period. So the
Mhm.
vocabulary had to match that. So you can't say, oh, he was puffing like a steam engine. No steam engines. So
Right.
to
Right.
make sure that your metaphors match the era type of thing. So this is a culture that believes very much in books. They have this great library, but their books are constructed differently. Their pages fold out. Um,
Mm.
so they have this notion of instead of trying to get a page, fold this out, unfold this for me. So they have these sort of analogies and metaphors that are based on the world that was built.
Interesting. I like that.
Yeah, very cool. So
Yeah.
you've written 3 books in this series. What have you learned as a writer between writing the first book and writing this third book?
A ton. I started writing it in um, not in this century. It was 1998, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And the interesting thing about writing something of this scope is how things draw. I tend to write to endings. So even if it's a chapter ending or a book ending, um, I find once I know where it's going, then, oh, even if it goes all over the place, I know where the destination is. Um, so the book became quite large. And when I finally presented the size of it to my publisher, he said, this is too big. And then it underwent a really interesting thing that I call literary mitosis. It was a
Mm-hmm.
cellular division into 3 books. And amazingly, it divided beautifully. I hadn't been aware of how easy it was. Because each book ends with a cliffhanger. And the cliffhanger that really shocked me was the last one in book 3, because I had a rough ending mapped out for that. And I sort of wrote it out. And then my little writing voice said, okay, you've got this out of your system. Now write this. And it's as if the book grabbed me
Mm-hmm.
by the throat and threw me to the ground, and I was on fire. I wrote for my usual habits was write 5 to 8 hours a day, every day, and that went on for 10 years. But this
Wow.
particular chapter, it was a writing possession in a way. It was as if you were taking dictation. I'm sure you guys, when you write, when you get grabbed by
Sure.
inspiration, wow, dinner, lunch, forget it. And so 10 hours, I was dazzled by it and shocked. And the interesting thing about that last chapter, it opened up the portal to the series continuing, which I had not anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
See, I completely understand that
Yeah.
obsession and what you were saying about how the idea just takes you and throws you down. I've run into
Yeah.
that with the samurai book that I'm currently writing
Uh-huh.
that takes place in 1830s Japan. And it was like the characters just grabbed a hold of me, and I was like, okay, I was just along for the ride at that point. I
Yeah.
was just like sitting back, drinking my Coke and just letting them have at it,
Right.
and it was an obsession until I got the first draft of the book done.
Excellent. And it is like,
And that was 3 days.
and it is, wow, good for you.
3 days.
And it is like writing, taking dictation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It is. It is
Yeah.
because they're talking in your head and you're just
And
basically typing out what they're saying. You can go fill in all the other stuff later. Just get down
yeah.
what they're saying so you've got the
Yeah.
story, and get them to be quiet so you can go to bed.
Right. Right. But can you go to sleep when you're in that phase? I mean, I think see, one of the things I have,
I think I
I
slept
hear,
maybe 6 hours those 3 days until I got that rough draft done.
like,
I think maybe
right,
6 hours
right.
total. Yeah.
I keep a notepad with me at all
Yep.
times.
Same
I
here.
slip it into my back pocket. I have it by my pillow. This one is number 34. And
Yep.
the other thing is that you can see some of the writing maybe. Um, this is a
I'm going to
shorthand I developed. Yeah,
bring
go
you
ahead.
up.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Very
So
cool.
this is a type of shorthand I developed when I was at school to write things down more or less verbatim. Um,
Mhm.
and so,
That's pretty cool. I've never developed
Well,
my own shorthand, but it
yeah,
might be
neither have
something in the
yeah.
future.
But it lends itself to the glyphic writing that the city has in a
Yeah.
funny way. So yeah.
since we're kind of on the subject, what's your writing process like? So, do you plot things out, or do you kind of come up with it as it goes? And do you use any apps or any sort of programs or something, or is it on paper, or what? What's your what are your keys to your process?
Okay. Okay. No apps. As I say, I take notes, and if I get notes, then as soon as possible, I will get back in front of the computer, type them out, slot them where they should be. Um, I tend to, as I said, I tend to write to endings, um, writing 5 to 8 hours a day, every day without fail, um, in sickness and in health. Um, and yeah, but there are also images that draw me and just, okay, this is happening at some point.
Hmm.
And I think
Hmm.
I know it's going to happen, and I write it out. And then somehow, oh, it gets bumped to the forward, and okay, fine, something else has to happen. So it's pretty, I guess it would be organic. Um, and they just let the things sort of slowly develop. And then a conversation will happen. They say, oh, that doesn't happen here. It goes over there. And so it's, I let the writing decide in many respects. At one point, I have Sass, my character. Um, he's found out some pretty upsetting news, and he's been manipulated badly. So he's going to go home and sulk. That's what I thought the chapter was going to be. And I realized, gee, that's not a very good plot to happen.
Hmm.
And the introspection has to be done really well without getting turgid and slow. And
Right.
oh my
Right.
goodness, will this guy not let up? So he comes up, he comes in the house, and he thinks to God, oh, and then out of the blue, I wasn't expecting this. He hears a voice from above say, "Sass, I need to speak to you. What? Come up, come and have your meal in my suite. I need to talk to you." And it turned into a much better chapter. So along with the bad news he's found out, he is loaded with even more expectations by his aunt who runs the house. So I thought, well,
So you're pretty much a pantster then.
yep,
You're writing organically, just basically by the seat of your pants.
yep.
Okay.
Although,
Do you ever use any other than writing to the end of the chapter or writing to the end of the book? Do you ever use any form of outline other than what notes you've taken?
occasionally, but not often. Sometimes when I sketch out a chapter, it'll sit there. There was one chapter that sat there for a year and a half. I would keep adding phrases into it or little bits and just leave it there and to marinate, to cook. Um, there was one chapter in, it's book 3. and it just got 5 pages too long about this one character's crisis. And, but each phrase that got put in there just, ooh, this is a nice juicy little line, or these are beautiful words put together. Then when I finally came to write the thing, wow, it distilled itself down into 2 paragraphs. And so
Nice.
it had to cook and wait, marinate, gestate. And yeah. But then the
Nice.
other thing that happens too is when I wrote that last chapter, which is now the last chapter of book 3, um, I showed it to my partner, Robert, and he said, oh my goodness, don't change a word. I was in a Scheherazade-like thing. I was feeding him chapter as they got presentable. And he just, wow, don't change a word. And I didn't. But what I had to do, I had to go back to the entire manuscript and re-edit it to bring it up to the standard of that last chapter. And that took
Right.
5 years.
Right.
5 years
Oh,
went
yeah.
into that. And it was only after that then the book divided into 3. So it was a very interesting process to see. You know, you think you're delivering one baby, and oh my God, I've got triplets.
What made you want to be a writer?
Reading. Reading books, just say, ooh, that'd be a lovely thing to do. And of course, when you read as a child, you have things like I read all the first 7 Oz books. Just like,
Oh,
I'd love to be able to write like that.
Yeah.
sure.
Or poetry, a child's garden of verses type thing. You know, thank goodness all that juvenilia has disappeared somehow miraculously. And but then serious things like Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, which I thought was an amazing book. And then Somerset Maugham's short stories, and then got into science fiction. And I loved Asimov's Foundation series. And that whole premise was also based, I think that's also the Foundation trilogy was how does civilization keep going without the violence and the conquering? That was the
Right.
prior empire. So that also added into the experience in Normandy.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that.
What has been most effective in getting your book out to a wider audience? So how do you tell people about your book?
I think, like a lot of writers, we're a shy little species, and
Yes, we are.
we should like, where's the nearest rock? Where's the nearest fallen log?
Yeah, don't make us do the marketing. Let us just write. Don't make us do the
Exactly.
marketing. Yeah.
So, the lovely company that I discovered, it's a Canadian company called Telwell. They did a wonderful job. But then there's a certain cutoff point, and you're supposed to keep going. And I flailed and floundered. So I ended up reaching out to Black Chateau. And this is why I'm on the air with you guys.
Yeah. So you got someone to help you get the message out.
Yes.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
It allows you the time to write instead, right?
Yes. Or do a lot of research that may go nowhere.
Sure.
But another couple. But
It's better to have more research than not enough. I'd rather have too much and weed out what I want to use than not have enough. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's never enough. At a certain point, though, you can begin to feel the load is getting more than sufficient. It's an interesting thing. And you say,
right.
Okay, I'm just procrastinating here in the worst possible way. Oh, but there's this interesting book on whatever it is you want to look up. So, no, enough. But, yeah.
I think I have heard from a lot of people that, and we've talked about this with multiple people about not liking to do research. I think that we all 3 like doing research.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
So we're kind of, I don't know what the statistics are on that with writers, how much they enjoy doing research, but it's like, I have the opposite problem of a lot of writers in that I love doing the research and I have to figure out when to cut it off Because if it's research instead of writing, then that's not good. You have to know enough to get the ball rolling, and then
Right.
if you get stuck with something, you can always look something up or ask an expert or
Right.
whatever.
But I guess
And
also when you're
that's
doing,
something I've. Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
That was something I ran into when my best friend Miriam, and I were writing The Legend of Captain St. Pierre. I have naval members in my family, so
Oh,
as I was going back
Nice.
through and re-editing St. Pierre for us, I was being a bit of a stickler, less so much about things like the proper dress that they were wearing,
mm,
or the fact that most sailors wore either some sort of small deck shoe or bare feet. I was more interested in making sure that every line on the ship was named correctly.
Oh, the rigging.
Which
Right.
the rig, yeah, you've got the rigging,
Yeah.
you've got rat lines, you've got other type of
Right.
things, that, and so I was doing that kind of research with it. Right now, with the
Excellent.
book that I'm working on right now, that takes place in feudal Japan. I'm looking into where was the shogun's court actually located. Was it located in Edo? Was it located in Tokyo? I mean, Kyoto. Which shogun am I actually working with here? This is the era. I need to make sure I've got the shogun right. The names of each piece of clothing, because
Right.
and here's something I found out: the term kimono did not actually come into existence as what they call their clothing until after the shogunate. It was the
huh.
Meiji Restoration was the
Right.
ones that termed the
Interesting.
concept kimono. So what was
Hmm.
the name of each piece of clothing that they're wearing? This is the
Nice.
kind of research that I've been enjoying, and some of it
Fantastic.
comes while I'm writing, some of it comes before, and some of it comes
Right.
after.
So
Peter,
when people, yep, sorry.
oh, go ahead, please.
Okay, it's just that going back to the concept of research.
Yeah,
When people, I've been asked several times, what do you do when you have writer's block? The best thing to do is read. Read something,
Is
preferably
read, yes.
out, or research. But sometimes just reading outside your genre and just say,
that's a
oh,
great idea.
yeah.
Hmm.
So, but it's right beside research.
Yeah,
Usually, when I'm writing a certain type of book, like if I'm writing a historical fiction, I go and read sci-fi.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Right.
Yeah, I'll go read
Right.
sci-fi.
Right. Nice.
um, what's the most surprising thing someone has said to you about your books?
Oh, that's a good one. Um, hmm. I think it
Hmm.
was there was a in chapter 2 you find out that a young man who's written an expose has mysteriously disappeared, and his girlfriend, um, they're basically really good friends. They could have been a bit more, but nothing ever took off. And he goes on a hunt for the manuscript, um, and she never finds it, but she falls into the secret society that is planning to collaborate with the same barbarian that's coming, and she gets recruited and initiated um, into this subterranean um, existence. But when she's brought into the fold, she half expects her boyfriend to be there, but he's not.
Mm.
And someone mentioned that to me reading an early draft, and her observation, I made sure that was included in that chapter. But I had not thought of it until she had said,
Right.
"Oh, I thought she was going to see so and so."
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting. I like that.
Uh, listen, for me, beta readers has been invaluable because they always either they reinforce what it is that you have in the manuscript. They say, "Oh, this is good. I like this," or whatever, or they might say something like what you dealt with, which is, "Oh, I thought maybe this might be longer," or I expected them to, you know, I expected this chapter to go this certain way. I've changed stuff because people have said, I wish this conversation went on longer or whatever. And it's like, oh, okay, that's a great idea.
Nice.
People can do a lot to help you in the development process. That's for sure.
Well, I had one person say I had to invent a game called Spheres, which is sort of like a cross between Scrabble and billiards, I guess.
Oh, that's an interesting concept.
So I've been asked twice now, oh, where can I get this?
Right.
So actually I had a friend of mine make up a board so that I could play the game, at least for myself, so it was research again, so that I could get the sense of how the balls would rotate around and how they link up or ricochet off. And I actually bought a book on all the billiard shots that you could make so I get the terminology right. So,
oh, wow.
So, yeah.
That's
and
really
I'm not
cool.
a pool player. Yeah. But you are not a samurai. I'm not a billiard player.
But we still figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Research. Yeah.
It's fun to pretend.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, Peter, we're just about to wrap this up. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about what it is that you're going to do next, and then where people can find you and your books.
Okay. Well, this April, the last weekend of April 2025, I will be at the book festival, the LA Times Festival of Books, at the Black Chateau booth, which is, I think it's 125, booth number 125 in the Gold Zone. And I'll be signing books from 10 until 12 on Sunday morning. But it can also be got on at Amazon and Barnes & Nobles and a few other places. And you can check out the website, petergribble.com, for more details. Yeah.
There you go. Do you have a social media presence?
Not much. I'm just slowly learning how to use Instagram. So it's bit by bit. I'll get there. I hope.
That's awesome.
You'll get there.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, thank you for coming on. Is there anything else that you want to add?
No, I think that this has been a wonderful time with you guys. I wish you the very best of luck with your writing and endeavors. And
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
My pleasure.
Thank you for being on here. All right. Well, Beth, it's to you now. For tell us where people can find your stuff.
You can find my stuff on my website at BethBethanne Freely FREELY.com. You can also find it in the usual places: Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Kobo. Just look up my name, you'll find me. Social media, you can find me also at the usual haunts: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads. Just go grab my link tree, B.A. Freely, FREELY, and you will find everything I've got there. And you can also contact me on my website or at themusesfunhouse.com.
Yeah. All right. I'm at writeworks.dirkhooper.com. You can also find me at themusesfunhouse.com. On X, I'm Dirk Hooper Plus. That's DIRKHOOPER+. And I'm on Facebook at dirk.hooper. Before we go, I want to say that Beth A. Freely is offering editing and book trailer services, and I'm offering author branding and social media management at themusesfunhouse.com. And I'd like to invite everyone to join and participate on our new Book Crew Facebook group. You can get updates about the show, insight from working authors, including Beth and me, and post about your own book projects. It's at facebook.com/group/Book Crew Podcast. Join and tell your author friends. Thanks to our guest, Peter Gribble. He was a lot of fun. For Beth A. Free, I'm Dirk Hooper saying, dream hard.